Looking for the best in authentic Maltese cuisine? Then you need to dine at Georgies on Vista. Situated in the heart of Fraser Rise, you can't go wrong when it comes to family dining. We have a menu for mum and dad, one for the kids, and one for seniors. Everyone's taken care of. Don't miss our specialty nights. Tuesday night is Parma night, where you get to choose from not one, but 5 different Parmas. Wednesday night, kids eat free with every paying adult meal. Thursday night is members night, where members get the chance to win some great prizes. And Friday night, join us for happy hour between 5:30pm to 7:30pm. Jim, Johnny, Jack and their little brother Schooner are only $5 each. Looking to get an early start Friday afternoon for a punt? Our sports bar with TAB is open from 3pm Friday afternoons. To book your table, email info@georgiesonvista.com.au. Bring the family and come dine at Georgies on Vista, 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Rise, Plumpton.
Good evening and a very, very warm welcome to you wherever you may be. Thank you for joining in and tuning in to the Football Out West show. It is episode 60. It is going to be a massive show. It's the lockdown edition of the Football Out West show. My name is Tonchi Prusak. I'll be with you over the next hour and a half, possibly even longer, because we've got a massive, massive show tonight for you, and it is going to be absolutely huge. And joining me, as he does every week, Craig Filer. Craig, a very, very warm welcome to you. How are you?
Yes, well, Tonch, you?
Not too bad, all things considering. You know, today should have been another day out and about. In fact, we should have been in Colac today, but and we should have been talking about all the games that happened this weekend. However, to compensate for that, folks, geez, we got a big show tonight, Craig, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, Tonch. Yeah, we've been trying to get this guy on for quite some time, and lockdown has enabled us to be able to do that. So,
and without further ado, here he is. He is, of course, Steve Curtin. Well done, Steve. How are you?
Very, very well. Very well. Thanks, Tonchi. Good evening to you. Good evening to Craig, and good evening to everyone tuning in. I was actually going to be at a wedding right now as we speak at the reception. That's obviously not happening, but if you can't be there, the next best place to be is the home of football in the West, the Football Out West show. So we hope everyone enjoys the next about 90 minutes coming up.
Now, I'm sure, Craig, you weren't thinking about Steve.
Right now as we speak at the reception. Ooh. That's obviously not happening, but if you can't,
can hear double echo.
I'm hearing myself twice. That's all right. In case
Craig,
anyone missed that,
I'm sure you weren't thinking of Steve, even though it's always great to have Steve on board on a lovely Sunday night. But you were obviously talking about a bigger guest tonight, weren't you?
No, I was actually on about Steve.
Good old.
No, we've got the CEO of Football Victoria, the new CEO. I'll say new. He's 100 days into it, I believe. Tonch, today or this weekend, and
about something like that. Yeah.
Kimon Taliadoros is going to be joining us from around 7:20, 7:30 this evening, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions being put to him about the state of football in Victoria.
Oh, who's rubbing their hands in glee out there in viewerland? We're coming to you live via the Football Out West Facebook page, the Geelong Region Soccer News Facebook page, and also live simulcast on our YouTube channel as well, the Football Out West Show YouTube channel. So it's going to be a battle between those three platforms to see who's going to attract the most viewers. But, ladies and gentlemen, there are 2 ways that you can get involved with us tonight, and that is in the comments section. Like you do each week, every week, we'd love to hear from as many people as possible. And also, Craig, hopefully, fingers crossed, technology, if that works well, we're going to we've got the gremlins already. We might have the talkback lines open a little later on. So that's going to be awesome. Can't wait for that, hey?
Yeah, looking forward to, like I said, up the Gremlins work. We've had a trial run just now, and we finally got this. So hopefully we can get some of our listeners phoning in and asking some questions of the said guest.
That talkback number will be 0497151234. The number is there on your screen, ladies and gentlemen. So be sure to jot that number down. And when the talkback lines are open a little later on in the show, be sure to ring that number, and you'll be able to ask the CEO of Football Victoria, Kimon Taliadoros himself, all the questions that you want answered. And I'm sure lots and lots of people have got lots and lots of questions to be answered. But Craig, let's first of all talk a little about what is making the news.
Okay, where shall we start, Tonch?
Oh, wherever you'd like. Champions League.
I suppose. Yeah, look, let's start with the I suppose this is the big part of the news over the weekend was Chelsea becoming the UEFA Champions League winners of 2020-21. Fantastic achievement of the club. Second time they've won it, and the second time in 2 years that Tuchel has coached a team in the final of the Champions League, having been at Paris Saint-Germain last year.
Steve, did you watch this game by any chance?
Well, I had to have a bit of a sleep in this morning after a late one last night, catching up on a lot of other live sport going on. But yeah, it looked like a super entertaining game just from catching it on the mini match. It was constant sort of end-to-end goal-mouth opportunities, despite the fact that it was a 1-0 game. It looked like an absolute thriller. And by all reports, if you're invested heavily as a supporter of either team, it felt more like it went by in about 40 minutes rather than 90 minutes. And it was that time on 42 minutes when Kai Havertz scored the decisive goal. Thomas Tuchel only 90 days in charge of Chelsea and 123 days in charge and 30 games, and he's already picked up the old big ears there. So there you go.
Yeah, look, it was part of the commentary, and it was a fantastic game of football. Really, really good. I don't think Manchester City were on top of their game, not the best performance you would have seen them play, but Chelsea defended very, very well as a group. But in commentary, and I think one of the big things that come from this is that's Frank Lampard's squad there. So somebody did say in the commentary that a lot of credit has to be given to Frank Lampard because he's brought all of those players into the club. He just couldn't get them to gel together, or not consistently. But Tuchel's come in, and as you said, Steve, only been there, a handful of weeks, but has already picked up the Champions League, but seems to have them organised and playing in a fantastic style of football.
I got some comments coming through the comments section. Maxi Santich, very intense Champions League final. Very well, thank you for that, Maxi. Brenton Ray says, and fully deserved in my opinion. Chelsea worthy winners, no doubt about it. I reckon Manchester City's team selection was woeful. Guardiola has been slammed in the UK press. Interesting, good stuff, and that's coming from two Liverpool supporters. So there you go. Interesting comments regarding the game. For me, that guys, one of the endearing moments was post match when Pep Guardiola accepted his runners-up medal and kissed it. Actually, probably as an example of his appreciation for or being part of the tournament or respect for the tournament. That was a good thing to see, but. Apart from that,
deep down, that means nothing, mate. Deep down,
means you got to get the boot because you lost to Chelsea.
It is good to see something a little bit different, actually, guys. Last night, Kate and I watched the documentary on Barcelona's Pep Guardiola era, the documentary on Stan called "Take the Ball, Pass the Ball." So it was a good preview ahead of behind the scenes of what Pep Guardiola's like. It's a fascinating watch, actually. So very poignant. We happened to watch the night before he lost the Champions League final, but I'd recommend watching that one. Quite good.
There you go. Okay, well done, Steve. Gents, moving along to the next now, involving one of the Welsh clubs that actually you don't like so much, Craig. So pretty good result. Tell us all about this. The richest game, is that right? The richest single game, they call it.
Yeah, it is, Tonch. It's 370 million it's worth to Brentford Football Club, who have never been in the Premier League. I think 74 years they've been established, and obviously this is the highest they've got. They were there last year in terms of the playoffs, but never got this far. So I think it's always nice when a club gets to a certain point, and they were fantastic last year, as we all remember in the championship, and lost out in the playoffs. And I think a lot of people would have liked to seen them go up last year, but it's really pleasing. Even though they sold their star striker to Villa in pre-season, they've come back, kept the majority of this squad together, kept their coach, and that's what sort of can happen. You go on that bit of a run, and fully deserved. I'm not a Swansea fan, as most people know, but I'm a passionate Welshman, and it would have been fantastic to see a Welsh club back in the Premier League. But unfortunately, it wasn't to be, and Swansea give it their all. But unfortunately, it's Brentford that will be playing in the Premier League in next season's championship.
Now, Steve, I watched a few months ago, the preview, or the unveiling of Brentford's new stadium. Looks fantastic. Go on YouTube if you want. Any idea where Brentford is? Is that actually on the outskirts of London?
West London?
Yeah, just outside London, just by Heathrow Airport there.
So it's kind of like Werribee to Melbourne. Is it along those lines kind of thing on the periphery of the city? Yeah, just on the peripheral, just on the outskirts of London. There's a lot of football clubs around Brentford, probably 15, 20 minutes from Wembley, and probably half hour to London. There you go, Joey G.
Joey G correctly points out there that we've actually tried to trick people with that graphic there. The score was actually 2-0, wasn't it? Yeah, in that match, both of the goals in the first 20 minutes. So they got the runs on the board early, and then Swansea never really got back into it, especially once they were reduced to 10 men on 65 minutes as well. Swansea. Yeah.
Anyway, the next graphic, Craig, tell us the latest news. Breaking news, apparently.
Yeah. I'm still waiting to have it confirmed, but I've seen something that says that the deal's been done for Postecoglou to go to Celtic, who's going to be the Glasgow Celtic new coach for next season. It says the deal's been done. I know they've been talking for the last 24, 48 hours or so. Your thoughts on that, guys?
Well, I think that's a reflection of how admired he is overseas, and not just in Asia. We know in Asia he's very much a respected coach, but obviously in Europe as well. I'm elated for him, and I think it's great to see an Australian coach breaking through. Some would say the Scottish League is not a big league. I think it is. We've seen a lot of the Socceroos that have gone there and played there. And look, even, Steve Gerrard and what's his name? Brendan Rodgers.
Never played up in Scotland, sorry.
There's a lot of those. What do you say?
He managed there at least.
Yeah. No, he managed. It's managed. I'm talking about coaches now. We're not talking about players. We're talking about coaches. I think it's a great step in the right direction. Steve, you?
Yeah, well, you do make a good point there. You look at the likelihood of, if that goes well, a chance to go into the EPL after that, like you say, like people like Brendan Rodgers who have jumped around there. So he follows a similar, I guess, form line to what Arsene Wenger did back in the day, doing his trade at Yokohama before going to do so well at Arsenal. So, yeah, look, hopefully this happens, and it's going to be absolutely massive if it does, because there's always been a big interest in Celtic Football Club from Australia, particularly going back to when Viduka was there. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating, and there's going to be a lot of Australian eyeballs on the screen when they play if this is what happens, because not only is it fascinating, he also plays an attractive brand of football, of course, that we wish we maybe still had in Australia with the national team even.
Yeah,
It's a fantastic football. I don't know whether you've seen the goal that his team scored over the weekend. It was absolutely phenomenal from start to finish. 15, 20 passes right in their corner, got it out and scored a superb football goal.
Well, Brenton Ray, the newsman, he's the breaking newsman. He says, my understanding is that a deal to take Ange Postecoglou to Celtic has been agreed. The only hold-up is securing a release from his current club and the appointment of a suitable replacement. Long overdue move for one of the world's most innovative and unrelenting coaches. He sourced Scott McIntyre. The Asian correspondent. Is that right for the World Game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Craig, let's take us through this next one. This is something that you've brought to everyone's attention. You posted up, I think, on your social medias yesterday. Now, that's the original ad. Then after public backlash, that was the what's the word? That was the
revised version.
The revised version. The revised version. Yes. Gents, discuss Craig.
I don't even know where to start, Tonch, whether it was a mistake, whether it was somebody joking around.
Yeah, maybe it was satire, guys.
Maybe it was, but it absolutely made me furious yesterday afternoon that
is that a sign of what you're trying to say? They're punching themselves.
I just think it's amazing that a club would even think it correct to put that on as an advertisement. Look, guys,
What do people think? Come on, add it in the comments section. We want to hear what you think.
I'm
going to play the devil's advocate, Craig. You're not going to agree with me. Just don't start swearing at me. I can actually understand where they're coming from. Now, hear me out. Hear me out. Hear me out.
Come on.
Hear me out. Just remember, by the way, guys, I've got the controls. Okay, now, hear me out.
When he stops,
it's silly.
Going to put us both on mute.
Wording. Now, listen. The wording is really stupid. I'll agree with that. But it's the Kangaroos. So it's not the Wallabies. It's not the Joes. We're talking about an age category. And what they're basically, I think, implying, and if anyone from Langwarrin is listening, please enlighten us, because I'm taking your side without having spoken to anyone from Langwarrin. I reckon what they've done here is purely say, look, we need players that are competent, to play Kangaroos. Now, probably the wording is wrong, and where they're saying experienced now, but that's these days. They want university students finishing a degree to be experienced. How the hell are you going to be experienced if you've just finished your university degree? No one's employed you yet. But now the world's gone even crazier, one step further, and saying we want experienced under 10 players,
300 gamers minimum.
Yeah, I mean, the wording's wrong there, but they probably want. And look, the reason I say is having had experience coaching in that level, it's very hard when you get a kid who's just starting and has never kicked the ball, playing with kids that have now been playing for 4 or 5 years. The kids that have been playing for 4 or 5 years, they get frustrated. They don't pass the ball to the kid. The kid just stands there, gets yelled at by his teammates, which is wrong, every time he misses the ball or loses it. So I think that's probably what they're saying. So maybe they've already got Wallabies and Joeys. I don't know. But Steve, I'd like your take on it.
I've got nothing further to add. It's outrageous.
You are such a diplomat.
I actually want to just read out something that one of my good friends, Neil Satera, wrote on the post yesterday, and it absolutely sums it up perfectly. Actually, in hindsight, it's not as silly as it sounds. 10-year-olds are experienced at throwing tantrums, making excessive demands, whinging, rebelliousness, not following instructions, attention-seeking, all prerequisites for being a top-tier footballer.
Last line's a killer.
But look,
all jokes aside, Craig, I do see what you're getting, and it does irk me that people are looking at under 10 level for performance.
It doesn't matter. Football is about development. Okay, it doesn't matter whether they're Joeys, Kangaroos, Hedgehogs. It doesn't matter what they are. Okay, they're there.
Hedgehogs.
Nobody has been a professional football player at 10 years old. Nobody will be a professional football player at 14 years old. All right, 15, 16 potentially is an opportunity for them. Let the kids play football. Somebody's I just voted too much pressure for a 10-year-old kid. I understand that they want to get the best kids playing at the best level they can. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But that 10-year-old kid who's now 9 years old playing under 10, how do you know he's not going to be the worst kid in 2 years' time?
Yeah, absolutely. Look,
young kids in a different I'm dead against having Kangaroos, Joeys, whatever else they're called, squirrels, hedgehogs, whatever they're called. Doesn't matter. Right?
Blamingtons.
It just annoys me that people it just annoys me that advert has even been put out on social media, and Mark from Western Eagles has put, why are we even talking about Langy advertising? Because of what was said in the post. They're not a Western club, they're a Southeastern club, but the reality is they've advertised for an experienced 10-year-old to play.
Yeah. Look, this is something that affects, that is, maybe they haven't gone about it the right way, but you know what? Unfortunately, there are other clubs that are probably just as bad. And you know what the other clubs do? They have trials. They have trials. You know, they have trials, and we've seen a few clubs. We've seen clubs across the western suburbs have trials for under 11 kids, under 10 kids, under 9 kids. I mean, Craig, you're right. Too much pressure for kids, too much expectation. End of the day, like it's quite mind-boggling, really. Like, what are they actually feeding these parents and kids and coaches and things like that?
Yeah,
as you say, it's a development phase. It's a development league. You bring in the kids. If they're not good enough at that level, you know, you play them at Joe.
It doesn't matter whether they're good enough. It doesn't matter whether they're good enough at 10 years old.
Yeah.
Who gives a shit whether they're good enough at 10 years old? They're not going to sign a professional contract. It's about them being involved in the game and the coaches helping to develop that footballer. Let's move on because I'm going to get ready.
I've got to read this one.
Some of the comments are gold, actually. Keep them coming in. Hello to everyone in the comments because there's some really good ones in there.
If they need an experienced under 10 player, then they need a superstar come seniors. Yeah. Oh, look at this. Alex Sivkorovsky. Next, they'll be asking if they've won the Champions League medal to be under 10. I love it. Absolutely. Crazy. All right, guys, enough of that. Let's move along. We're going to take a little bit of a break, I suppose. When we return, it's all about our guest tonight. He's the Football Federation, Football Victoria, the name has changed, CEO, and he will be joining us very, very shortly. On the other side of the break, it's Kimon Taliadoros.
Looking for the best and authentic Maltese cuisine? Then you need to dine at Georgies on Vista. Situated in the heart of Fraser Rise, you can't go wrong when it comes to family dining. We have a menu for mum and dad, one for the kids, and one for seniors. Everyone's taken care of. Don't miss our specialty nights. Tuesday night is Parma night, where you get to choose from not one, but 5 different Parmas. Wednesday night, kids eat free with every paying adult meal. Thursday night is members night, where members get the chance to win some great prizes. And Friday night, join us for happy hour between 5:30pm to 7:30pm. Jim, Johnny, Jack and their little brother Schooner are only $5 each. Looking to get an early start Friday afternoon for a punt? Our sports bar with TAB is open from 3pm Friday afternoons. To book your table, email info@georgiesonvista.com.au. Bring the family and come dine at Georgies on Vista, 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Rise, Plumpton. 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Rise, Plumpton.
Welcome back to the Football Out West show. It's episode 60, gents, and it's an absolute pleasure to have our next guest, who he's the CEO of Football Victoria, and have we just lost him? He was in the green room, and he's just darted out. Wonders of technology.
I think you're a bit green yourself, Tom, so I'm not sure whether it's your side there, mate.
Is that right? Oh, goodness me. Oh, don't tell me we've got internet problems again. We seem to be having that a lot these days. Oh, here he goes. It looks like he will be joining us very, very shortly.
There's too many people at home on computer games and
I reckon that's what it is. Oh, that's probably what it is.
Affecting our internet connections.
Yeah, I reckon that's exactly what the problem is. Oh, but here he is, hopefully joining us very, very shortly. It is Kimon Taliadoros, the CEO of Football Victoria. Welcome, Kimon. How are you?
Good evening, gentlemen. Can you hear me clearly?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Well, absolutely. Thank you.
I don't know what happened there, but an experienced 10-year-old would have managed that a lot better than I would have.
We need prerequisites next time.
Off to a flyer.
To the opera.
Straight in there.
How funny is that? But I'm going to kill Maxi Santich, though. He goes, I disagree with you. I do blah, blah, blah. Oh, he's left us again. Yeah. I was just playing the devil's advocate. But anyway, we've lost Kimon. He was back, and now he's pressed the button, and he's gone somewhere. I don't know.
Are you streaming in HD, Tonj?
Yes, we are.
That might be the problem, the bandwidth.
I've got 4 green bars on my side, folks. So that's pretty good. While we wait for Football Victoria CEO Kimon Taliadoros, it's been almost 100 days now to the day. On February 22nd, he was appointed the CEO after being here we go. He's back. He's back. Don't touch anything, Kimon. There he is. He's back.
Yeah, okay. All right.
All good.
Here we go.
Yeah.
No problem.
Now,
Sorry, gents.
No, all good, Mag. All good. Now, we were just setting the scene, and basically, it's quite uncanny, Kimon. But it's I think today or tomorrow is exactly 100 days since you were appointed the CEO of Football Victoria. Now, the presidents and prime ministers around the world, they always say the first 100 days of office, and they deliver a little bit of a snapshot of what's happened. Mate, over to you. How have you, from a personal point of view, how have you seen your first 100 days as CEO, taking into account you did serve as interim CEO for a while as well?
Yeah, that's right. And firstly, thank you for the offer to join you this evening. It's a great pleasure, and congratulations on 60 episodes. That's an outstanding achievement in the modern media, I think. So well done to all of you. And as we like to do in football at Football Victoria, we also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we play our game throughout Victoria, the 900 odd pitches throughout, and acknowledge any elders, past, present, or listening, and hope that they are. Well, you're quite right. Look, I assumed the helm with Peter Filopoulos' departure to Football Australia, which was in August last year, and of course at that time we were starting to emerge from that extended lockdown, and at that point in time, of course, we'd been through an enormously traumatic time, as most people had in Victoria, but of course for us in our football community, it was particularly acute, just with the timing of it and the financial implications that upset our routine. I'm delighted to say, though, certainly as of the last week, or up until last week, our game has rebounded, our economy has rebounded, our registrations are pretty well up to the 2019 levels, with still a couple of months to go. Historically, we do continue to pick up some players right up until into June, particularly in the mini Roos space. So perhaps that ad may well work. So we couldn't be happier with where the game and how the game has responded. It's robust. We didn't lose any clubs, although many clubs did suffer and are suffering. There'll be a legacy for them, which I think will extend to a couple of years. A number of clubs have set up some payment plans which will help them get through, and I think have some very, very loyal and committed sponsors who've assisted them and stayed with them, as well as, of course, the volunteers who've returned. But I suppose the greatest area of concern for us really is twofold. The only two areas where we haven't really seen the same response or the same level of interest, and that is amongst volunteers, and that's the case across all amateur sport in Victoria, experienced with basketball, netball, and AFL in particular, and volunteers. And you guys often talk about volunteers on your show. I'm aware of that, and the demands on them through last year were onerous, simply because the season hadn't been cancelled, and there was every chance that we would still be able to play some football. And that was certainly the view of the clubs. If it was possible for us to play, they would like us to have been in a position to be able to organise it. So that's the most gratifying. The organisation is financially secure. We had to take on extra debt last year to simply survive. We're confident we'll be able to retire that debt by the end of this financial year. And in most cases, we believe that many of the clubs have also been able to make it through, gents. So that's the assessment of where we are at this point in time. And I suppose up until earlier in this week, when, of course, we've now been challenged by this latest lockdown.
Now, Kimon, that's a great first up answer. Now, prior to that, you were the president of the board of the Federation, with the CEOs answerable to you. Now you find yourself answerable to the president and the board. How are you finding that difference?
Well, the role of the CEO is primarily operational and strategic, and whereas that on the board is primarily governance and strategic. So really, it's the strategic part where the roles do overlap. Last year was quite extraordinary in that the operational challenges and the operational tactics and strategies employed was simply prioritizing survival. And right at the beginning of the season, when the initial lockdown occurred, between $8 and $10 million simply vanished from our football economy. That means it vanished from the clubs and from us. And of course, it left many people and our football economy in tatters. So that's really where this last 9 months has just simply been about consolidation, financial consolidation, strategic consolidation, and then in a position for us to be able to rebound as we have this year. And I'm delighted to say that we've been able to remain intact so that we could respond to the market, which has been really positive. So from a board perspective, there would have been hands-off and governance, and from a reporting perspective and observing the ongoing reporting. But from a CEO perspective, it's simply ensuring that the priorities of the organisation are being met, albeit that they changed in quite a dynamic situation over the last, certainly the second half of last year.
Excellent. There are a number of questions coming through on the chat, and I'm sure you can see them as well. We'll try and get through to some of them as we go through. But you spoke about the president of the Football Federation, and Antonella Carr is now the first female appointment as a president. I suppose we don't know much about her. Tell us a little bit about her. I think she was your vice, wasn't she?
That's right. She was the vice president for 5 years. And herself runs Australia's largest project management business for aged care facilities. So she's a highly accomplished business person, and extremely astute and well qualified, and of course a lifelong football fan from the early days when she used to go along with her father and watch Juventus in the old days, and has been in love with the game ever since. So she has a great abiding passion for the game. And the intelligence and the ambition too, particularly with the prospect of the next few years really requiring a focus on women and girls and the opportunities being presented for football in Australia, but also in particular Victoria.
Perfect. Tonch, turn your mic on.
There you go. Usually that's a Craig Filer problem, but I've done that myself these days now. So it happens to the best of us. Kimon, obviously in your role, there's so much to cover and oversee, but we'll just touch on one of them, and the Federation's showpiece competition, the men's NPL competition, which now is at the halfway mark. Now, putting the current COVID crisis aside and hoping that doesn't have the same effect on this year's comp that it did on last year's, what's your assessment of the first part of the season? Is it living up to expectations from a Federation's point of view? Because from a fan's point of view, I think it's going along great, isn't it, guys?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's sort of 7 odd points between the top 7, isn't it? Something like that, which I think is fantastic in the NPL. NPL 2 and 3 also have a tight cluster at the top, and so certainly as far as the competition, the attractiveness of the competition is concerned, having a competitive environment for the title and for the finals is extremely important. I do think, though, also that many of the NPL clubs have been extremely conservative in their approach this year, particularly coming out of last year. And so I think the ambition that exists, I think, amongst most NPL clubs, I think will become increasingly evident in the second half of the season. I think because there's tremendous accolades and benefits available for those that are prepared to commit and for those that are chasing silverware. The great challenge is, of course, the unknown interventions, which the most recent one of which we've experienced this weekend.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and going by the first half of the season too, if the second half is just as good, and I'm sure it will be, it's going to be absolutely fascinating, and fingers crossed, of course, everything does go well. But turning our attention and our focus to the ongoing issue of government investment in football facilities, what are your thoughts on dealing with councils and other tiers of government for facility investment? And there's examples of recent times, such as the clubs in Moreland uniting for Pascoe Vale's greater good, and some of the bad stories out of councils, like we let snippet from the Moonee Valley Council meeting recently.
Yeah, it's a real test for us as a code, and a test of our maturity and strategic intent. And it's no more evident in those areas than it is in the NPLW, for instance, where we have also a highly competitive environment, but a number of clubs there that still haven't been able to secure dedicated facilities. And of course, dedicated football-specific facilities for spectators is really important and a fundamental to a match day and a game day experience, be it observing it online or being at the game. But Craig, I think the greatest challenge one of the many challenges for us in Victoria is that we're facing a chronic underinvestment in facilities, which I think has occurred over the last 20 or 30 or possibly even 40 years. And I think if you turn your minds to those famous old clubs that we know so well, you'll probably find in most cases their facilities haven't developed along with the professionalism of the game, and so that means that we are now at a disadvantage in being able to provide a suitable environment, not just for fans and players, but also to attract families and girls and women, so that they can enjoy football as well, be it men or women playing. And so the important part of our strategy, and this has been the case for the last few years, and we've had some success and some failures, is the collaboration and cooperation of the clubs who understand that we need to take a medium to long-term view in a particular council. It's all about the LGA, and collaborate as clubs and as a code with the council, because essentially they have limited funds. They have to apply those over a course of time. And they really need us to be a part of their strategic planning, because they are making meaningful and significant capital commitments. And they're unable to respond to short-term demands too well. So where the other codes have been so successful, in particular AFL and cricket, is that they've understood the long game and they've planned accordingly. And so generally speaking, those sports are particularly well off in being able to provide facilities for their players, even though I don't feel that the utility is the same, and that the demand for their particular sports matches ours. Probably the best example that springs to mind, I think, is, as you all know, is Pascoe Vale's ground there at Hoskin Reserve, which would be known to all NPL fans and those who've followed the game for some time. And it was quite extraordinary that every single club in Moreland, which is the most hotly contested, I suppose, ecosystem in our football environment, all collaborated to sign a single letter to council, which demonstrated the need for the facility to serve the council, to serve the locals, which meant that the clubs for the first time came together, strategized together, and collaborated to present a united professional front to council, which was ultimately successful against some challenges. Not the other codes in this case, but the dog walkers and the environmentalists, so who were keen for the open space. So the challenges are many multidimensional, and even though previously an AstroTurf pitch was approved by council, those now have different levels of challenge associated with them. They now need to satisfy the environmental criteria, which would mean that they're also sustainable, and that, of course, is another challenge for our code to be able to deal with.
Just want to touch on Kimon, a question from Maxi Santech actually for you. Maxi said, question for Kimon. How can we further develop and attract more referees at state league level, below state league, women's and juniors? It appears that more games being played post-COVID at multiple levels without referees. Now, I was told a couple of weeks ago that referees are down something like 300 personnel. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's about 200 games that we weren't covering in the first few weeks of the season. Essentially, now we've embarked on quite an aggressive marketing campaign to attract referees. So Maxi's question is exactly right. Attracting referees is the first task, and retaining them being the second part. And we know that each one of those elements carries with it certain complications. Certainly, the feedback we have is that the level of pay is reasonable and satisfactory. Therefore, we know that's adequate. However, the level of enjoyment and satisfaction for referees over a particular match or a particular day or at a particular venue varies. And I think that's anecdotally a contributor to being able to retain referees. So we churn through possibly up to, and we are undertaking a review at the moment, which will provide some empirical evidence on this. But we suspect there's a high level of churn. We suspect that that's in large part due to the fact that there's some dissatisfaction with some and disillusionment with others. And so the challenges will be by the end of the year for us to be able to have a highly effective marketing campaign that will target new people into level 4 courses and make it very easy for them to get qualified, ideally online, then with a practical session, and then secondly have a mentor early on. So those first couple of games are in a suitable environment. Ideally, we also want to try and get those referees to a club where we can be confident that the club will take responsibility for the environment and provide the support that I think is important for referees to then want to continue from their second to a third, and then for it to become a career path. So those are some of the challenges we've had historically, and a
lot of referees. Sorry if I've missed it there in that. Have a lot of referees giving up because of what happens within a game on a Saturday, of not enjoying it, the frustrations, the abuse, everything, all of the above. Because I've been at games and I wouldn't want to be a referee and get talked to the way that some referees get talked to. So that's obviously a massive part of the problem.
Yeah, we think so. And as I said, I think we'll have some specific empirical evidence which we'll be able to share with the football community. And I suspect you're right, Craig. I suspect that's a significant part of the challenge. And in particular, the way I can see some of the comments there from your viewers, that it's the coaches and the parents too who must take responsibility. I mean, the referees are entitled to enjoy their day. That's why they're there. It's not just simply about picking up, a couple of $100, but they're entitled to enjoy the day. And if they don't, it'll be very difficult for us to retain them. And I think we would all agree, well, certainly our view is that quality refereeing is a significant contributor to an enjoyable game. And I think that then we think, okay, well, what creates that and what supports that? And then we know that the behavior of the coaches is critical to that too. So the coaches and the referees, and then the players understanding their obligations on game day, I think, if we could get a lot of that right, I think it would contribute positively to a match day experience. And I think that then has other implications for other stakeholders.
Yeah, maybe that's something for us down the line, Tonch, of maybe getting one of the referee administrators on to do a show about the referees, because the more information we can get out to clubs, players, officials, parents, I think the better it's going to be. But we'll move on from that one, and we'll touch on the facility part that Steve was talking about earlier on. The home of the Matildas.
Yes.
We talk about investment and we talk about facility. $116 million investment in the Matildas HQ here in Melbourne. Talk us through that. How did that come about, and how important is it for Football Victoria?
Yeah, we think it's critical. We think it's been a critical, and it's been 5 years. 5 years ago, you may recall the Victorian government announced a commitment to gender equality in sport, and they created an office for women's sport. It started to change some of the key criteria for funding for different sports. From our perspective, we took that on immediately and recognised that this was a tremendous opportunity for Melbourne, who has such a great sporting reputation, to be the sporting capital of women's football in the region, if not the world. And the reason we thought that was possible is because there's an ambitious government, there's a great sporting culture in Melbourne, and there's probably one of the best brands in Australia, and that is the Matildas, the most marketable, attractive brands around, and I think has a good runway of a couple of decades to be able to continue to grow and develop and have impact on a global basis. And so those were really the ingredients to form the idea at the board, and we put together a pitch to government, which they supported with some funding, which we then were able to get to a project stage, and it's just been persisting with that. But the important thing about it, the really important thing about it, in my opinion, is that we have a physical landmark for football in Victoria. We're no longer invisible, and I think about how important it is for our sport to be seen, and also to be seen at the appropriate level, for the perceptions to be at the level we would like, which is why it's important that our facilities are of the highest quality. We have the highest quality, we have the beautiful game. But from a custodian's perspective, there's still so much work we need to do to be able to provide that infrastructure. So it's been a high priority for us for the entirety of my tenure as president, which was 6 years. We still have an enormous dearth of investment in those facilities, but I'm delighted. I just couldn't be happier that the clubs are recognising this and starting to mobilise and understanding the importance of them being able to provide that for their players and their staff and their volunteers, to create that beautiful club atmosphere. It's very important that there's a physical presence, and for us, from a Football Victoria perspective, that's what the home of Matildas represents. And of course, we'll have a state centre we can be proud of, which will be available to our stakeholders.
So in effect, it will be a national centre for the Matildas, but it'll also be the home of football here in Victoria as well. So that's something to look forward to. We might take a break. We're speaking with Kimon Taliadoros, the CEO of Football Victoria. When we return, we'll keep talking about the facilities. We might even touch on some of the comments that are appearing in the comment section. Sure. So keep the comments coming, keep the questions coming. We're going to be back very, very shortly, so don't go away.
Looking for the best in authentic Maltese cuisine? Then you need to dine at Georgies on Vista. Situated in the heart of Fraser Rise, you can't go wrong when it comes to family dining. We have a menu for mum and dad, one for the kids, and one for seniors. Everyone's taken care of. Don't miss our specialty nights. Tuesday night is Parma night, where you get to choose from not one, but 5 different Parmas. Wednesday night, kids eat free with every paying adult meal. Thursday night is Members Night, where members get the chance to win some great prizes. And Friday night, join us for happy hour between 5:30pm to 7:30pm. Jim, Johnny, Jack, and their little brother Schooner are only $5 each. Looking to get an early start Friday afternoon for a punt? Our sports bar with TAB is open from 3pm Friday afternoons. To book your table, email info@georgiesonvista.com.au. Bring the family and come dine at Georgies on Vista, 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Rise, Plumpton.
participants the opportunity to be active, meet new people and learn basic football skills as well. It came about, I guess, from a number of things, but the main one being Football Victoria's strategic plan, Football Ways. And a large part of that is the Women and Girls strategy, which is aiming to get 50-50 gender participation by 2027. As well as with our partnership with Vic Health and their active women and girls strategy as well, to get more women more active more often. Yeah, and it's all about providing that sort of safe and social supportive environment.
Welcome back to the Football Out West show. It's episode 60, and we're speaking with the CEO of Football Victoria, Kimon Taliadoros, who joins us live on the show, on the screen. And once again, Kimon, thanks for joining us here. Really much appreciated. Just before the break, we were talking about the importance of facilities and obviously female football, women's football. We just saw a little snippet there of a program that's not just designed for competitive games and soccer players, and certainly not elite players. It's basically for mums, and you don't have to be a mum, obviously, to be a part of that program. That's the beauty of our game, isn't it? That we can actually offer so many different examples of the sport, or so many different variations of the sport. How much is Football Victoria, I guess, investing in things like soccer mums and wheelchair soccer and frame football, all of those things that we've seen over the last few months? Futsal, another one.
Yeah, considerably. You're exactly right, Tonchi. That is that our game is so versatile, and it can be adapted to a number of different circumstances. And what we've found over the last 5 or 6 years, and I suppose anyone that's played football would be familiar with five-a-side. In fact, it's arguably the most fun football of all. With five-a-side in a social environment, but still playing for sheep stations, of course. But the proliferation of the different formats, I think, really makes our game quite different to many other sports. So we've seen a format such as Go Soccer Mums simply made available to people, women in particular, who've never played sport before or have never played football. But the environment that's created and the tone that's created around that is critical, because the expectations and the needs of people, women in that case, who are wanting to do exercise in a particular way, is important. It just so happens that it's beautifully simple when there's a round ball and 2 goals. So it's so versatile for us. Another good example would be walking football, and the beauty of walking football is it's generations can play it. So imagine football.
Craig can play it.
Sorry?
Craig can play it.
That's about my level now. The knees don't support anything else.
Well, I heard they said Craig already plays it.
Hey.
But look, really, the beauty of it is walking football means football, but walking without running. And so if you think what that means, well, then that means different generations can play in the same team. That's amazing. And boys and girls can play in the same team, and so that's primarily about participation, recreation, and activity. And football provides an extra dimension, which I think creates the fun and competitive part, which I think also lives deep within most human beings. So the other area we think is really important for us to support is futsal. We've been deficient over the last 15 years. It was, in fact, with the new regime at Football Federation Australia in 2006, decided not to do futsal. It was a specific decision not to do it because they prioritised other areas. And I think as a result of that, we have a high proliferation of sort of private providers, and who are doing a fabulous job. But our role is to help develop the game of futsal further in Victoria. So that's another area for us to continue to support. And Anthony Grimmer, I know you've had him on the show, is leading that, and he's made incredible progress already. So, this is the challenge for us, I think, in the modern society. We know we have traditional football, 11-a-side winter football that will appeal to some people, but we also know that there are many other formats that are also equally in demand, and it's our job as Football Victoria to ensure that we make those available and can continue to support the growth of those for us to be able to fully develop and cultivate the football culture we would love to exist in this state.
Craig.
Yeah, I just want to go back to another point raised on the comments side about referees before we go any further. And David Calthorpe, not seen him on before, so maybe a first-time listener, but he's put up, be brutally honest, not going to recruit referees until one important thing changes in the game. Adopt a zero-tolerance policy with all behaviour directed towards officials, both from on and off the pitch. Now, I know I was at a game last weekend and was stood next to a referee behind the supporters. And I know at one stage he had to go and have a word with the supporters about their behaviour. Now, I know obviously Football Federation, you look at some of the player fines, some of the players' suspensions this year that the Football Federation are coming down harder on poor behaviour on a football field. This is going to be a bit of it's going to open a bit of a debate here, but should we not start deducting points from clubs that have poor behaviour from their fans towards officials and other spectators on the side of a pitch?
Craig, I think you'll find that we'll be doing some of these things next year. We have the review underway. We expect to have some evidence to be specific about where those problems are. Ideally, we think we'll have some solutions to that, but we still have to test them out. So we may need to do that in a few different competitions. But I would have thought that, that things like that, sin bins, clubs also being able to take a certain view on refereeing and providing a particular environment, some benefit for being able to do that. For instance, if we would also possibly rely on referees reporting on clubs. Uber, for instance, they report on one another, but at this stage it just seems to be the referee on the receiving end. Now, in saying that, referees do make mistakes. We've seen evidence of it this year. It's not going to change. The best in the world still make mistakes. In fact, the odd player makes a mistake too, and coach. So that's the reality. But
not at under 10 level.
Yeah, and I'm just reading at some of these comments from your listeners and watchers. I absolutely agree, and I think we'll become bolder in these areas. We do, though. We will seek the support of a lot of clubs and coaches, because what will happen is there'll be a spike in cards or sanctions or whatever it might be for that first, month. And I think until then, or maybe even 6 weeks in some cases, some coaches will find themselves on the receiving end of cards, and clubs will be sanctioned and players as well. But I do think, we may even end up with games than less than 7 players, for goodness sake. I mean, you can't rule that sort of stuff out if we're going to go down this path, in which case then we all as a community need to say, okay, well, that's fair enough, because we're trying to change behaviour here. And so that would be a good example, I think, of where we could have an impact, Craig. I quite agree, and I think some of the comments I'm reading down here are largely supportive of that too.
Yeah, look, I think so. I think we all love the game, but there's nothing worse than, being in a game when you've got parents, shouting and bawling at one another, abusing referees. That's not good for anybody. And especially as, I've already talked about, the development of football, development of young players. What does that say to the young kids playing football when you've got a mother and a father shouting and abusing at referees on the side of the pitch? It then just becomes the norm, and that kid's never going to learn from. So, for me, it's something that would benefit the game. I know referees, and I'm a coach myself, as you know, and it's hard sometimes. It's hard to bite your tongue and not say derogatory things when you see something that's not right. But it's not right for the game. It has to be stamped out, and I think having those penalties aimed at clubs, particularly in clubs that are doing very, very well in particular leagues and are looking for promotion perhaps, and then all of a sudden they get an issue with one of their youngsters, and it could mean that they're going to lose 3 or 6 points at a dramatic stage in the season is going to cause massive implications for that club. So look, I don't think you would have a problem with a lot of clubs getting on board with that one, Kimon, if I'm honest.
Well, you'd think so. You'd think so, Craig, but the test will be when it happens, because as you just correctly said, and when I've coached as well, I've also found myself expressing a view to a referee, which is it's just not on, and in many ways we justify it because it was a poor decision, or because of the pressure, or because of our perspective. But the test will come when we have to impose that discipline upon ourselves, be it at the club level, the coaching level, or the parent level, and so then will the will be there to follow through from all our stakeholders? Because if one of those isn't working, we don't get the outcome. I'm interested in your thoughts, and in fact your listeners as well, as to whether you think this is something that is achievable.
Yeah, well, look, from my side, as a coach, I would be distraught if I had to, if I got deducted points because one of my parents or bad behaviour from somebody in the crowd, and we know it happens at every football match, But I think it's about time now that it was stamped down. Somebody's just mentioned on here, referees are volunteers as well. In most instances, yes, they get paid for doing it, but it's not enough, in my opinion. I know you said they get paid and they're happy with that, but
not for that abuse. It's
not for the amount of abuse that you get.
But which job, Craig, do you go to a workplace expecting, unless you're a prison officer, do you actually expect to get abused? And that's the thing. If they are working, if that's their workplace, they don't expect to get abused. Correct? I mean, it's the bottom line.
It's unlawful. It's unlawful.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
We've got some great questions. We really, really do. It'll be very, very hard to get through all of them. I really honestly don't know where to start. I think Alex Sitkarovsky says, a nice, good, I feel good question. He goes, Kimon, what's been your highlight of the year so far? Well, and don't talk about that big investment in Bandura. We already talked about that. That's hard to beat. That is hard to beat.
It's very personal. Can I give you a personal one?
Absolutely.
Okay. My 16-year-old daughter, who Lucy, who's never really shown much interest in playing football, decided this year that she wanted to play for the first time, and she joined Elwood in the under-16. So it's really interesting for me because, of course, both my daughters make their own decisions, but I think she was attracted to, having watched it through last year through COVID and being a big Juventus fan, to do that, and for me to go along and watch someone who's never played then have to go and play under-16 football. That's there's a gap. There's an interesting gap there for the people that are joining the game late and wanting to play. Really? We don't really have a simple solution for them other than into our conventional structures. So these are really interesting things for me, that if we're attracting people to the game and they're joining at different ages, they may not all have played as kids, or even if they did play as kids, they may not have had the benefit of some technical training. So they don't necessarily have the motor skills to be able to play at that level. So that for me has been just really fantastic. And the second part of it, I've got to say, is, and the most gratifying part is, last year we had such an awful time with the clubs. They were suffering. We were battling with a lack of finance in the game, both for clubs and for Football Victoria. But the resilience, the commitment from the clubs, they've returned. They're strong. They're committed, and virtually every single club, with only a few exceptions, has been able to provide a team for someone to play in this year. And I can't I undervalue what that's taken for those volunteers, because 98% of our clubs are run by volunteers. So I would, that for me has been the most remarkable thing this season. So we had a lapse that was imposed on us, but I have just such great respect for these people and what they go through and what they've done for us to be able to have a football season this year.
Kimon, obviously Football Victoria this week is celebrating National Reconciliation Week. Can you tell us a little bit about the importance of the role that someone who's pretty prominent as a footballer himself, James Brown, played at Football Victoria, and the role of his new replacement?
Yeah, it's terrific news that Chris Swain has joined our organisation to head up our Indigenous football strategy, which commenced about 3 years ago with Football Victoria's commitment to do a RAP, a Reconciliation Action Plan. And we always talk about acknowledging the traditional owners, and we have, there's 900 pitches in Victoria that we use, that our clubs use, and that's on the lands of the traditional owners. And so as a sport, it's our obligation to come to terms with that. And it's complex, and it's as we know, it's even more so at the national level. Through these sorts of challenges. And so James Brown, who's a fabulous player in his own right, initiated that with Football Victoria about 2 years ago, and started the process for us and led it really effectively. In fact, we're the most advanced of all the state sporting organisations, and in fact, certainly the most advanced of any football organisation in Australia. But unfortunately, Craig. During the pandemic last year, he shot off to Queensland and took up and played back up there in the NPL, and then was offered a fabulous role back in government. And he's just excelling. He's an exceptionally talented person. But now we have Chris, who's joined us, and that's his job, that's his obligation, and it's his great passion too. And what we do know in football is that progress in many ways relies not only on capability and skill and ambition, but passion, to drive for that, and particularly in our game with all the obstacles. So having someone like Chris join us just last week is incredibly exciting for us. And that's the sort of, it's a demonstration of the commitment we think is necessary in certain areas of the game. And I must also shout out to the guys at Western United who've committed to the frame football, Tonch, which I think you were telling me about, which is fantastic, because at times like this, people need connections, and that's what sport can do. And in particular, of all sports, football can do that. And so, why shouldn't football or a football experience be available to everyone? And our obligation is to try and work out what football format is required to be able to do that for every Victorian that wants to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I had the pleasure of watching that, and I was there at the Leisure Time Centre when that frame football thing happened. And there was a gentleman that drove an hour and a half from the other side of Melbourne to be a part of it. So we forget just how passionate the parents of those kids are, but just to see them play, I mean, it's seriously, it is awesome. It was absolutely awesome. So big shout out to Pete Bradley, who was on our Geelong Region Soccer Show last week, Steve. With regards to that. So brilliant stuff there. Craig, you're next.
Yeah, I suppose to touch on very, very briefly, I've got a couple more questions, but touch on, obviously, last weekend was a washout because of the current situation that we find ourselves in. I believe there's been another 5 cases today. I think we're all wanting football to be back this weekend, highly unlikely in my opinion. Just found out today that Point Cook is now an area of concern with a few shops being closed down, which is a bit of a worry as well. What's the contingency in plan for football? I know it's pie in the eye. Let's see what happens. But what's the contingency? Obviously, we've got the Queen's birthday weekend coming up, and obviously we've got the August catch-up round as well. Are we likely to see any games being played midweek to try and get through that? Yeah.
I mean, I think that ends up being the contingency, Craig. If we can't simply reschedule the missed week into the makeup rounds, then we're obliged to consider those options. If last year's any indication, we prepared for the season twice before it was suspended, and even through that period, we were contemplating scenarios that might appeal to clubs. And through that period, we had a range of different responses. Some clubs at some point said, no, it's too difficult and we would rather not participate. Others insisted on us being able to run as much of a season as we could. So from our perspective, we believe our job is to run football competitions. We run 40,000 fixtures a year. It's about 800 a week at this point, 900 a week at this point of the season. So, if there are any more than a couple of weeks that are eliminated from our season schedule, it does create complications, and then it gets to the point if we can't make up games and we can't make up those games midweek, we then have to tinker with fixtures, and you can imagine the complexities that then arise there, because the fixtures aren't always, don't always affect clubs equally. So the integrity of the competition then is brought into question. And I've seen even a couple of questions there about, promotion and relegation. These are all the implications of any decisions that are then made. So we're kind of hoping we don't have to contemplate that, because that ultimately means a very difficult period ahead with our clubs.
Yep.
And then we simply have to go about making decisions on very clearly articulated criteria. And I suppose, for all those clubs that have made plans and invested in promotion and progress, they're also vulnerable. And so the longer the lockdowns, the more complicated it becomes.
Yeah, good question about the promotion relegation. We've got Michelle Williamson, who poses one question. She's the president of Melton Phoenix, a good friend of this show. And she says, I guess lockdown aside, can we confirm the number of teams getting promotion and relegation in the state league comps? Also, if different, why have the rules of competition been changed and targets moved for clubs? Obviously, she's talking about State League 5, because the Melton Phoenix are in Men's State League 5. Kimon? Is that something you can answer?
I'm sorry, Michelle. I can't answer that specific question. I apologise for that. But if you would like to send that question in, I'm more than happy to try and solve that one. I am delighted, though, that I was out at Melton Phoenix earlier this year with the prospect of a new facility there. I mean, that precinct that's being built out there at Melton is quite something. And the Phoenix, I think, I can understand Phoenix is one of those clubs that's highly ambitious. And they're doing
very well this year, actually, Kimon.
And I think that will be quite an incredible facility and a pleasure to visit in the future. So, Michelle, my apologies for that one. I don't know the specific answer to that one, but I'll try and get that answer back to Tonch if you'd like, and Craig if you'd like, and then the guys would be happy to provide it perhaps next week. Tonch, you're in your
absolutely
format.
Yep, can do. Yep. Craig, you're next.
Let's go on to what should we do? Let's talk about the pillars of new direction, I suppose, of football. Victoria have adopted the whole football strategy, or the whole of football strategy. We've touched on it just earlier on. We had Anthony Grimmer on the show talking about futsal. With that and with other forms being developed, what else is there out there that potentially Football Victoria are looking at? I know we've touched on it with obviously all the frames and the Go Mums and all that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else out there that Football Federation are looking at?
Yeah, probably the two key areas that we think are important to emphasise over the next few years are schools and social football. And the reason we believe, and when I say social football, that it just means non-traditionally organised football. So that might mean, a sevens tournament or a sevens season over, 10, 12, 15 weeks. Our non-traditional winter, 22 round, 30-week season. And why? We have plenty of evidence to suggest that there's demand for football in a format other than 11-a-side played throughout the entirety of winter. There's people have more choices, and they also have different consumption habits these days. So, how are we adapting our product portfolio to be attractive for them. But not only that, we haven't really been active in our schools, and so most of the other codes have been extremely successful in visiting schools and then being able to generate participation and fans out of that. Western United, I think, have done a reasonable job, but this year they've certainly committed to their region. But the most important reason we need to do this is because we have a target of 50-50 participation in 2027. That's only 6 years away. And so that means that we need to find other ways in which we can attract and retain women and girls. And it's not through the traditional football structures that we have. Those will not give us the growth that we require to be able to achieve our objectives. So futsal, social football, sevens, go soccer mums, walking football, and in school competitions, intra-school competitions where kids don't necessarily have to be playing for significant in a multi-school tournament, but they can still participate within their schools. So these are the key areas for us to establish. The game is in good shape. Our clubs are important. They're continuing to develop and evolve, but each club is constrained. Each club will be constrained unless they're able to unlock additional infrastructure and facilities, which means that whilst we're doing that, they will all still be landlocked. And I saw one of the questions in there was about schools, and they're exactly right. Yeah. How can we access those and get some football activity happening there? It's most certainly a really key area for us over the next few years.
I think it might have been Maxi Santich. A good point. And so many schools. Once upon a time, as kids, we used to, the schools were accessible. You go there, have a kick, no problem. These days, the schools are gated. You can't get there. Yeah. It's quite frustrating for the kids anywhere. And when a club does approach a school, they said, no, you can't have it. So it's obviously
back in the UK, Tosh, big part of the football development from a very early age was through schools. You played for your school, you played for the rep team, you played for the county, you played for all that stuff, which I don't see here, which is a real shame, because I think that's where, if we're looking at development, is a key area for us to promote, is that certainly that school corridor of football. Yeah.
Now, I mean, Kevin Thuma made a good point. One of the other comments where he says the number of games simply is just not enough. And I think the point that he's trying to make is that the seasons are short. We don't have enough games. But having said that, Kimon, what you're talking about is including some more non-traditional elements of whether it's futsal in the summer, whether it's school soccer. So potentially allows a kid, for example, to play all year round, but not necessarily for his club or for traditional seasons, but some way, shape or form, he's going to be kicking a ball 365 days of the year. Wouldn't that be the absolute ultimate to be able to offer the kids of Victoria that type of option?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And so, when
here we go. There's a comment.
Sorry, that's my dog in the background.
Yeah, look, I think where Kev comes from there, particularly, I think it's more geared around senior football, maybe as well, because I think at MPL 2 at North Geelong, I think we played 22 games. So that's 22. That's less than half a year of playing football. Now I know there's other codes then come into action and facility. Right. It keeps coming back to, I suppose.
Right, it comes back. It's the number one impediment to the growth of our sport. The fact is that the facilities are broken up into summer and winter.
Yeah.
Yep.
And which means that we only have 6 months available to us, in most cases, in 80% of cases for our clubs, to play football, which often means most clubs are looking for somewhere to do pre-season, let alone, complete an entire season. So at the heart of it, and a high priority for us is, to what extent can we influence both state government and local government policy in relation to this? Because we are unable to meet all the full demand that we have. We're curtailing growth, and that's not in the interest of a local community. So those policy decisions, those historical legacy policy decisions, are really important for us guys. They're probably the most important. So with futsal, for instance, if futsal can be defined as a summer sport, for instance, it then gives us access to facilities outside the traditional winter window until we're able to solve those challenges. So that's really, really at the heart of it, quite frankly. And if we're able to achieve that within the next 3 to 5 years, if we were able to achieve that, our growth will be exponential. It really will be, because the demand is there, and the demand is there particularly because we're able to adapt and provide a range of football products, which gives us that annual ability to provide a football on a 12-month basis.
100%. Steve.
One of the tantalising things in discussions over recent months and maybe even longer is the prospect of the National Second Division taking place in Australia. What are the standing points or the thoughts from Football Victoria and yourself on that matter?
We've been a strong advocate for the Second Division for the best part of 3 or 4 years, right through the Football Australia constitutional process. We were very supportive of the AAFC being formed. We were strong advocates of a commitment to Second Division. We strongly believe in it, and we've played a role in supporting the narrative and supporting that the proposition. Really, where I think it finds itself, and I do believe that the current Football Australia administration and leadership are committed to it as well. Beyond that, it now sort of shifts into that development of a model and a competition structure and a strategic plan. All the work that needs to happen there, and that, from a member federation perspective, we're certainly supportive. It's a national competition, so that falls within the jurisdiction of FA. So we'll continue to lobby, we'll continue to support it, but I don't think most other states do. I think the minority of states are in support of that, and so Football Australia still have a task there to be able to, to form the coalition necessary to make it happen.
And what states would that be, Kimon? What states would that be? Victoria and New South Wales predominantly?
Yes.
And we've talked at length about this Second Division, and we had Rob Sherman on just after he left his post as the technical director, and we had the AAAFC on as well as Craig Moore and other people. Is it such a bad thing that other states don't want to come into it yet, because there's a lot of unknowns to it, I suppose? Could we not have a 8 to 10 team tournament out of Victoria and New South Wales as a start? It hasn't got to be 16 clubs straight away.
Yeah.
Can it not be 8 or 10? See how it works. Is it viable? Does it tick all the boxes for the clubs, the Football Federation, and do it that way?
Yeah, I think that's logical, and I eventually think that's what will happen. I think there's sufficient ambition and there's sufficient commitment from Football Australia and also from a number of leading clubs throughout the country that they're able to make that happen. But I mean, I think if we just take a step back and look at the A League, for instance, set the W League to the side for one moment, they've been successful in securing a broadcast deal recently. But I think you all would have read that they're also looking to raise significant amount of capital to invest in the growth of the competition.
Yep.
It's a significant amount of capital that's required, and so these clubs are already coming off a reasonable base. If we look around Victoria and we think about which clubs would be able to make that transition, I don't know how many there are. I think probably the biggest club in Victoria would probably be Preston. The crowds that they get, the entertainment they put on, they're consistently getting the largest crowds. And so, to then be able to scale up to 5,000 and 6,000 people and the necessary commercial model, I think is an enormous challenge. And I think clubs, our NPL clubs, if they have that aspiration, need to start scaling up now. Otherwise, the the chasm will be too great. And so I think a part of convincing and making the second division happen will be those leading clubs demonstrating that. And so I think, that's where some of the risk and some of the challenge then falls to some of those leading clubs.
Yeah, and you talk about the infrastructure of clubs there, Kimon. You mentioned Preston Lions, who've done a massive amount of work and are still doing a lot of work with their facilities there. You've got South Melbourne, you've got Heidelberg, who've just come off a multi-million-dollar and still consider it. So, you've got Heidelberg. You've got Green Gully potentially. You've got. You got George Cross, who have a fantastic facility up there.
Incredible. Yeah.
Would you need? You mentioned sort of grounds of 6,000. Would you need that many supporters to make it viable?
Well, in the absence of that,
if we talk about sort of Western United just a few weeks ago on a Monday had 800 people watching them, which is disastrous for football.
Yeah, and I mean, so that business model relies on drawing down on capital.
Mm.
If the revenue's not coming from anywhere to cover the costs, then it has to be drawn from capital, the owners, investors, whatever it might be. And so, if the NPL clubs don't have a robust commercial model, they're then also relying on their generous benefactors or indeed contributions from their community, because the one source of revenue we do know exists are spectators. So if they're not arriving, Craig, if they're not turning those sorts of numbers, I'm not convinced. I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that there's a broadcast deal out there for a second division that would be enough to sustain a second division with its cost base. Australia it's a big country, and we have that. We have the tyranny of distance to overcome, and so that's an enormous obligation. So that's why I mention those sorts of numbers, because in the absence of that, the clubs then have to be able to draw on cash flow to continue to operate. And what we don't want in the first couple of years of the B League is failures. We don't want.
No, we don't want that. That's for sure.
Yeah. So that has medium to long-term implications. So I think that's where the challenge lies in being able to either have that investment that will then sustain it for those first few years to build the value. And we need the clubs and investors, and then we need the fans. And the eyeballs, and in the absence of that, it doesn't quite work, guys. But and the A League is confronting that exact same challenge now, albeit on a bigger scale.
Definitely one good thing about the NPL, and we talk about it, and I guess we're a little bit biased because in some way we're all involved as commentators, but you can watch every game of the NPL via live stream, and the technology these days that is available is incredible. Yeah. But it is a bit annoying when on a Friday night you've got everyone wants to play Friday night football, and you've got about 5 games, and then you've got about either 5-6 different screens, and I guess that reflects in the attendances as well. The attendances aren't as good as they possibly could be. Is that something that maybe Football Victoria has discussed and thought about? Maybe what we need to do is actually work on the marketing, not the marketing, the marketable ability of the league, and fixtures is one of them, coverage, etc.
Is it though, Tonch? But is it though, Tonch? Because if you were to have those games on a Saturday afternoon, you're not going to be the other way, where you won't get the supporters there because they're all watching their local clubs.
Oh, look, you're always going to have it, but my thing is, when you've got 5-6 games on a Friday night, it's very congested, isn't it?
It doesn't help. Yeah, that's not great. Tonchi, you're exactly right. So if we take a strategic, we could be a lot better. Yep. We could be a lot better at, and I'd like us to be a lot better at developing our NPL value proposition, and that means we have such great brands. We have fabulous brands, historic clubs. We have emerging clubs that are just, such as Georgies, who George Cross, who've demonstrated their ambition and what a fantastic facility. But it takes a collective approach and a collaborative approach.
Yep.
From the clubs. So, for instance, clubs might schedule on a Friday night because they believe it will deliver them the best, the highest number of fans. But it may or may not be in the interest of building the NPL brand for the reasons that you just mentioned, which means that, through this process, clubs then need to be able to make these trade-offs and collaborate. And I think we're probably short of that at the moment, but I'd like to think it was possible because there are some highly successful, ambitious, capable presidents and leaders in these clubs, people who've been incredibly successful in life and business.
Yeah.
And what we really need is a collective view on championing football, and football first, club second. That doesn't exist at the moment, but perhaps football and club together, that would be something that would be fabulous.
Yeah, it's a change of philosophy. We've well and truly gone over regular time. We're into extra time. We're going to take a very, very short break. We won't be gone too long. When we return, we'll have talkback lines will be open. So get ready to ring in. We've got heaps and heaps to still get through. Don't go away.
Looking for a venue for your next event? Our function room at Georgies on Vista is the perfect place for your next special celebration. That special birthday or anniversary, a baptism, communion or confirmation, whatever the celebration, we can provide a fun and enjoyable atmosphere with great food. Why not hold your next corporate event in our function room? We can seat up to 100 people and can provide you with a professional environment. Whether you're looking to hold a stand-up or sit-down event, we can cater to your needs. We have meal plans and platters for you to choose from. For more information, send an email to info@georgiesonvista.com.au. There's no better place out west to hold your next function than at Georgies on Vista, 46 City Vista Court, Fraser Rise, Plumpton.
Welcome back to the Football Out West show. It is an absolutely awesome show tonight. We've got the president. We've got the CEO of Football Victoria, Kimon Taliadoros, on. Kimon, once again, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you also for staying so long. Where the referee's blown full time, and we're now into extra time. So hopefully, won't get to penalties, but. We're going to open the lines.
Like the Europa League final, mate.
Yeah,
well, I had
22 penalties.
Yeah, sorry guys, I had to move to plug my lappy, and it was just about to drop out.
It's good mood lighting there, Kimon.
Oh. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it's the number there is on your screen. Call us now on 0497 151 234. That's 0497 151 234. Folks, here's your opportunity now to get on the Football Out West show and ask the CEO of Football Victoria, Kimon Taliadoros, a question. We're going to take a couple of questions. We've already gone, like I said, way over time. But Craig, have we got anyone on the line?
Unfortunately, we haven't, which amazes me when we think of all the comments that have been put on our show and various shows and social medias over the last 12 months. You thought I'd been inundated with calls this evening, but we haven't. But if anybody does want to jump, as Tonji said, 0497 151 234.
Surely Kevin must want to ask me a question. I've seen he's had a number of questions there.
Kev Thurman, yeah, he's too shy. He's definitely, you won't get him on the. You won't get him.
Come on, guys, put your money where your mouth is. Give us a call. Come on.
And David Calthorpe, I thought, has also made some really interesting points.
He has indeed. And someone actually suggested, Kimon, that David maybe should be brought onto the Football Victoria board. But he does say a point. Let's say, is this a myth or is this actually what's happening out there? He does say clubs are drawing on the $2,500 they charge for junior NPL fees to fund. I think he means to fund their senior team. If that's the case, why don't we see more junior NPL players representing their clubs at senior level?
Can I jump in there?
Craig.
I know they're charging $2,000 to $2,500 in some instances. Not every club is doing that. Mm-hmm. When you take out all the kits, the cost of the kits, the cost of the coaches, which you have to pay, the facilities that you have to pay for, all of that stuff. That 2,500 guys, whether you think it and it's going into senior football, I can tell you from the club I'm involved in, nothing goes into the club. It's all taken out at source for various other things before it even gets to senior level. So I think there's a big myth around this, kids paying $2,000 and it's all going to fund senior players. Kimon?
I think, Craig, I tend to agree with you. That would be my view on in the majority of cases. What's interesting about, and I think actually Kevin did make a comment earlier. Obtaining an A license, obtaining B, C, and A licenses is quite expensive, enormous commitment for coaches, and they expect to recoup that. And typically, as Craig said, if they're coaching NPL kids, it's 4 days a week, it's 40 weeks a year, and it's a match. And it's all the preparation and management of that team throughout. So coaches they're semi-professional, and so they are paid accordingly. And so I agree with Craig. The reality is we have a user pay system. So the NPL program is enormously demanding on the coaching and administrative staff. And so there are premiums associated with it, let alone the other, which is why I think that the clubs need to do that. And we would like to think, and we know that qualified coaches, experienced ones as well, but qualified coaches provide a better outcome for those kids. It's not necessarily, NPL isn't necessarily elite, but it's a high quality 40-week program for kids that are interested in developing their skills. And then from that cohort, we would expect most elite players to emerge.
Yeah, absolutely. Craig, no one on the phones?
No, it's not switched off. So
am I the only person who's never had anyone call in for a question?
It's incredible. It's funny. Yeah, people have got comments. I
think we might have someone. Take me off.
Okay, well, there you go. We'll go to say, and it's funny that people love to criticize. Kimon, this is a good point. Actually, it brings people love to criticize. Clubs love to criticize. What you know, but when it comes to actually helping yourself, and we see this in the area of I'm from a strong media background. And often you see clubs whining about the fact they're not getting the coverage, whether it be in their local press or whether it be whatever the case may be. But the clubs we find that really get off their backsides either employ someone to do their media or really take their whole media strategy very, very professionally and are very proactive. They're the ones that get a lot of attention, a lot of media exposure. And that obviously leads to sponsors and et cetera, et cetera. So we need to learn as clubs and as football people to also not just sit back and wait for manna from heaven to fall down in our laps, but to actually be proactive and do something about it?
Of course, Tonchi, and I think, each club is a small business, isn't it, really? Albeit providing a social product. And so growth generally relies on being able to invest in that marketing, promotion, and sales, and that's generally, it's generally discretionary income, as Craig mentioned there. With the costs associated with running a club, there's not a lot of money left in the till. There just isn't a lot left, let alone the fact that it's volunteers being asked to do it. So it does require, Tonch, not only someone committed or an organisation or a club committed to doing this once, but consistently over time. I think for it to have effect, because it's a highly competitive market, and in the absence of making that commitment over an extended period in a consistent way, it just won't work. It's not sustainable, and so clubs. I think many clubs have had the best of intentions and have tried things, but really the challenge is to be able to sustain it and then convert that into some sort of sustainable model, and that has been enormously challenging at all levels of our game. At every single level of our game.
Now, Craig, we may have a caller.
Oh no.
Unfortunately, we do. No, unfortunately, we do have David Calthorpe, who's come on and call through to the show. Welcome to the show, David. You're through to Kimon.
Yeah, thanks. How you going, guys? How you going, Kimon?
Hey, David, how are you?
Good, thanks.
Thank you for your questions.
Yeah, well, no worries. I'll probably just give you a little bit of background just quickly. So, I'm come from an AFL background. Worked at AFL clubs.
Mm-hmm.
I was a professional player myself for 10 years, and I worked in sports administration at AFL clubs for almost another 10 years after that. And my kids now play football/soccer.
Okay,
smart
And
kids.
so I sort of seen firsthand both sports, and that was probably the basis of my sort of questioning. That I feel like there's a lot of things that can improve in the sport, and obviously you acknowledge some of those things tonight. But I mean, one question that sort of wasn't answered and sort of affects my son is that. So he plays for a club. I won't mention the club just in case. But our team was placed in Wallabies at the start of the season.
Mm-hmm.
We pretty quickly asked to be regraded into Kangaroos because we pretty much thrash everyone that we play against.
Yep.
And only to be turned down. And we've got to finish the season in Wallabies, which is not fair for our kids, not fair for the kids that we're playing against, and only to be told that it's not changing.
Okay.
But yet there's a team in the Kangaroos who are getting flogged. There's a bye in both the Kangaroos and the Wallabies competitions, and we're told by an FFE employee that won't be changing.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So a couple of thanks, David, for your question. I think I'll try and answer it in a couple of ways. The first one is this year has been a little unusual, particularly in the mini Roos space. In that, I think the week before the season started, we had sort of over 150 to 200 clubs withdraw, and then a bunch then added. So we've had some chaos, So we have had a little bit of chaos, and I think we took a view that we'll over the first few weeks we'll try and sort it out. So if that was the case, David, and it was that obvious, and it was that I'd be surprised. But are there perhaps no other circumstances that make sense, and perhaps if the club were to follow up to try and understand that, I promise you one thing, and our staff, they really care and they want to find solutions. That's the mindset, and so I think that would certainly be the approach. Be the approach, David, to try and find solutions where we can, and where it's not possible or where it's too difficult, we often have to live with it simply because of the volume, and so that may provide you with some context. But I'd encourage your club to follow up. If they feel strongly and they really do, and there aren't any other circumstances that perhaps you're not aware of.
Yeah. Well, I know for a fact they have followed up and they've been had a visit into your head office there, but still not unsuccessfully. So my concern is, Kim, on that. Is it because we're only a community club? And I do understand the level of, the amount of teams and the difficulty in fixturing, and, you've got MPL, you've got community clubs, you've got so many different age groups, even with the girls, because both my girls play as well. So
fantastic.
I do understand all the complexities, but it just, to me, it seemed like a no-brainer, but...
Well, if it's it's a no-brainer, it's
commented, and as well as Michelle Williamson here, that they're the grading for mini Roos is in week 9, which is normally the case. David, after a few weeks of the season, there's normally a week where they have that regrading round, which has been going for as long as I can remember. So hopefully that'll change for you. But I have a question for you, actually. How does it feel from someone who played professional AFL to now see his two daughters and his son playing the proper football?
Well, my son plays both codes, and I coach him in the other code. So But he's played the round ball code from grade prep basically, and I've actually loved him playing that sport, and I'm hoping he wants to continue. I'd rather see him play the round ball rather than AFL.
Why is that, mate? That's an interesting point you make. I mean, you played professionally at AFL level. Why is that? Why is that coming from a dad? You'd like him to see him playing.
I just think there's more opportunities in the game. I think AFL is a big sport here in this country, but it's really in this country really a big sport, and it's a bubble really. I think that I'm not being disrespectful, Kimon, or anything, but I think if the game of soccer here can get a lot of things better than what they do at the moment, and their price point's a little bit better, then I think that they'll dominate the game of AFL. But I've seen over the last number of years they don't seem to want to be able to do that at the moment. And you shed some light on some of the difficulties, with the number of pitches you get to play on, and I've seen it all firsthand. But I still think there's a lot of ways we can maybe make the game more attractive for participants. Even so, with my daughters, my eldest daughter wanted to play AFL, and I was just no way I was going to let her play AFL. I just don't think it's the right sport for the females.
You're a great dad.
Injuries and so forth, and she and both my girls sort of excel. Both my girls enjoy playing the game, but I think the game also doesn't cater for the. You mentioned a comment earlier. I think it doesn't cater for females properly. My eldest daughter wants to play. She wants to be the best she can be, and she will do everything and train as much as she can and whatever's the opportunity for her. But my other daughter, she just loves playing, but she doesn't want to train 2-3 nights a week, an hour and a half at a time. And then some of them get to the age like my daughter's team. A couple of them walked away because they want to go out on a Thursday and Friday night. They want to work now. They don't want to train So I just don't think sometimes the game caters for them, those ones. They just want to play because they love it.
Yeah.
So why can't they train one night a week, and why can't they play once on the weekend?
And that goes hand in hand, Kimon, with what you said about having a social element, a social side where kids, when they do get to 17, 18, are doing VCE or university exams, and they can't train. And even if they are very good, they can't train 3 times a week with NPL clubs because of study commitments, but they still want to play. And we don't want them walking away. And that's a really good point. But that's the globalization and the opportunities football. We know about it, and we're seeing people like David being exposed to that. But Kimon, someone that you knew from your playing days, we talked about him earlier in the show, Ange Postecoglou. So he was your coach or a fellow player at South Melbourne.
Yes.
He's now on the verge of landing a gig on the other side of the world at Glasgow Celtic. I mean, from a personal level, you've known him for a long time, and he's done so well in Japan and now in Europe. That must sort of drive you as well to provide a whole generation of kids with the opportunities that your sort of generation had.
Absolutely, and I think Ange has demonstrated that as we've seen with many of our players, that an Australian can aspire to be the best in the world, and he's still on his way. He's still young, and so this isn't the end for him. This is just the next step, because he's quite an extraordinary person, and right from his days as a player, his mental strength, his competitive nature, and his thirst for knowledge. He had always had an inquiring mind, always wanting to understand. Not just understand the game, but understand why. And then because he had that about, he then empowers himself to advance his thinking, to being able to solve problems and press for exceptional outcomes. And I think it's, it just fills me with such great pride that someone like, he decided a little while ago, of 20 years ago, that he was going to commit himself to being a professional coach, and he did it probably prior to most other people doing that in the game, and he's an exceptional talent, and I think he's also someone that has a strong conviction and faith in the Australian DNA, the DNA of the Australian sports person, men and women, and I think he showed that when he was coaching the Socceroos, and the values he stood for, the values he insisted on in his teams, and he didn't want to play the Dutch way or the German way or a modified English way. He wanted to find the right way for Australians, that Australians, through all our diversity and all our exceptional talent from such a range of different backgrounds, have that common, that common view, that common essence, and somehow he's been able to identify it and codify it. So, that sort of brain for me is one that's bound for greatness, and I think he'll continue to do it. Yeah.
And I think what you said then about, didn't want to play the Dutch way, wanted to play his own brand of football and a style of football. We've touched on that on the show with many different guests over the past 60 shows about we're not Europe, we're not Holland, we're not Spain, we're not Italy, we're Australia. Right. So we can't try and be something that we're not. Let's create a brand of football that's Australian. We go back to the Socceroo team of what year was it? 2008?
2006 won at the World Cup.
Yeah.
Yep.
We haven't progressed as a football nation since that. Sorry, guys.
Is that
last chance
call?
Right,
yeah, it's the last chance call. Talkback lines are open, 0497 151 234. The number's there on your screen. Last chance. We're going to take one more caller. We have really, really stretched the friendship here a long time. We've been almost on the air for 2 hours. And
we'll get one more on.
One more on.
Take me off. Let's get this caller on, and we'll.
And Craig looks like he's got someone on. So he's I love that Knight Rider music. I haven't heard that in years. Goodness me, that's fantastic. But as Craig is getting this last caller on the screen, thank you to everyone that has in any way been involved with the show tonight, whether you've been listening and just listening in the background. We've had some great callers, great comments, questions as well. Just a reminder about tomorrow night's Geelong Region Soccer Show. The featured club is Cryo Soccer Club. We did have the Cryo president, Mario Gregorio, put a comment there. So they will be featured on the Geelong Region Soccer Show. Steve, me and you running it tomorrow night at 7. Craig, have we got someone?
We have. We've got another special guest.
It's not Michael.
It is Michael.
Oh, no! How can we have a show without Michael on?
Kimon's actually just going off screen now, Michael.
Michael, you can't have my Socceroos top, mate. Sorry, yeah. I saw your question. You can't have. I only have one left. I can't. But maybe your little guy. Maybe your little guy's going to be a Socceroo himself.
I want to ask you, which is your favorite Socceroo kid and your favorite Socceroo moment? Sticking with the Socceroo team.
Well.
I know you're a bit of an advocate for kits, Michael, aren't you?
Yeah, he is. He is. But I mean, the game against Uruguay was special, but the game against Croatia, I thought at the 2006 World Cup was something else. Because there was so many layers to it. There was so many, Australian Croatians and Croatian Australian. There was just it was our moment. It was our moment, I think, and it was being there at the ground too was just quite exceptional. That for me was, and of course Harry Kewell and Viduka. That era of players were my favourites of all time, and so I loved watching them at their best. And so for me, that particular game will live long in the memory.
What about the Greece one in Melbourne? That was pretty good as well.
That was the
memory. You too.
Good. Skoko scored that one too, right?
Because I got a Greek name. Look, the goal was exceptional, wasn't it? I mean, that goal was scored from over the halfway line. If I recall. Are you talking about Skoko's winner?
Coco, yeah.
Skoko's winner, right?
He's never been that far forward, surely.
Probably, yeah, that's right. Well, I think that was a sensational goal. Doesn't compare. You know that World Cup matches, World Cup qualifiers. That's the real thing. You know, that's when everything matters and everything's on the margin. And so for me, that game was a ripper.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect.
Thank you, Michael.
Thanks,
Much
Michael.
appreciated.
Thanks,
now,
Michael.
you can't have Kimon's Socceroo top, but you can have mine. There you go.
Can you sign it for him first?
1999 at a Big W, whatever it was. I don't know. I'll sign it for him if he likes. Yeah, not a problem. All jokes aside, thank you, Michael, for joining us on that show tonight. Thank you, Kimon. Very much appreciate it. It has been a massive, massive show tonight. We really appreciate you coming on board. I know we're in lockdown. We've got nowhere to go, but still, nonetheless, it'd be rather spending Sunday night with your family. So we really do appreciate it. But you are spending it with your football family. So we do appreciate it.
Beautiful family too. Thanks, Guy. I do want to take the opportunity to congratulate you and thank you. In football media is a difficult job. It's an extremely difficult job. I know you guys haven't yet been able to buy Maseratis and yachts as a result of
ever.
Next week.
So I well understand, and really we do appreciate it. We appreciate your commitment. We appreciate the time you put in to understand the nuance, the detail that really matters. These sorts of conversations are not possible unless you're across everything in the detail that you are. So certainly from my perspective, congratulate you and thank the three of you and in continuing to fly the flag for the beautiful game.
Thank you very much on that.
Thanks, Kimon.
And on that note, we wish you all the very, very best. Not just for this year, but ongoing. It's going to be a tough year, no doubt. Next year will be this likewise. But we all hope and know that at the end of the rainbow, there's a pot of gold, and that pot of gold is called football. Good on you, mate. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, boys.
Thanks, sir.
Thanks, Kimon.
Have a good evening.
Much appreciated.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
That was Kimon Taliadoros. Geez, guys, a mammoth show that was, but what a great show it was. I'm sure that everyone out there really appreciated it. Thanks to everyone that is saying great show. They really enjoyed it. We enjoyed bringing it to you, and hopefully, you guys really thoroughly enjoyed it tonight. But it was a really, really entertaining show, was it not, guys?
Yeah, look, it's superb. We could have gone on for hours, I think. And,
man,
it was great for him to come on and open up. You know, sometimes when we get guests on, sometimes they're a little bit reluctant to open up and say perhaps things that we want them to say. But he certainly was pretty open there. And whilst we didn't get through all of the questions, we got through a fair few of them. But just thank him for coming on. He was a busy man. But great show. Great show.
Yep. Thank you to everyone for joining us. A big shout out to George Cross Football Club, home of the award-winning Georgies on Vista. They are our major sponsors. Without them, it would have been very, very difficult bringing the show to you. But speaking of sponsors, next week, Craig, we hope to have a major announcement regarding another sponsor. We're really excited about this, and fingers crossed all will go well. Fingers crossed the lockdown will be lifted. We will have some form of football on next week. And in the meantime, Steve, myself and yourself, we will be back for the Geelong Region Soccer Show on tomorrow night from 7 p.m. with the Corio Soccer Club. So look forward to that. And once again, Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Tonchi, and thanks, Craig. And don't miss it tomorrow night at 7.
Awesome. Good night, guys.
Good night, gents.
Good night.